Hi, didn't see you there. Ever since my video on popular furry creator eBay Carson, which skyrocketed me to the title of Weird Nerd with an audience of mostly queer teens, I've wanted to talk about how the YouTube furry and Therian space works. There's some controversy, there's some wholesome stuff, there's some jokes to make, all that fun stuff that would make people click, and Squiggles needs those YouTube fun bucks. However, I would always draft a script or some ideas and end up saying some pretty negative stuff about some creators who are really popular and have pretty rabid fan bases. As much as I don't want to paint that target on my back, I think spreading criticism, even of people you like, is important. For example, I love HBomberGuy, but it would be nice if he could just post a shorter video every so often instead of taking 2 entire years on one. I still love his content, but there are things to be criticized. There is criticism to be made of every single online space and online creator, which includes me. There are small editing mistakes, factual errors, and opinions I don't fully agree with that riddle all my videos. That doesn't make me the worst creator, and it doesn't make anybody in this video the worst either. All of this to say, please don't release my address on Reddit. I also want to say that you shouldn't harass anybody in this video. Despite how heated I get, this is, at the end of the day, a performance. You are not meant to harass these creators, and if you do, I would like to say that I think you are actually scum to me. Taking a video discussing things like this as an excuse to make people feel unsafe is trashy behavior, and people who do those things do not speak for me.
In the past few years, furries and Therians have become more and more of a talking point. What are they? How do they work? What are these strange feelings stirred up inside of me when I see Tony the Tiger? Hopefully, I'm able to answer some of these questions successfully, especially when it comes to YouTube. These communities are so vast and interesting that it's hard to write a script about their place on the platform without going on about it for way longer than you should reasonably spend your time on. Each creator I will be discussing in this video has something to say about art, social media, and, society, man.
With all that out of the way, it's time for the obligatory video essay history segments. First, let's talk about furries. Furries. Weird, degenerate freaks that pee in litter boxes in public schools and are into animals or something. That's just what I learned on the Alex Jones show, though, along with the fact that capitalizing on the fears you've created by lying is actually really profitable, and it'll bring you to court. What is the truth about furries, though? Furries are basically just people interested in art that includes music, cosplay, comics, etc., related to anthropomorphic animals, aka human-ish animals. Yes, this includes sexual interest, but this is a YouTube video, so we're not going to be going into that. The beginnings of what would become furry art would be created in the 1970s, though we've been doing this shit since ancient Egypt. Either way, the 70s were about when furries began to become a social and cultural group.
As Cameron Isaiah Dunn puts it in Aesthetic Fandom Furries in the 1970s, furries became an identifiable whole in the 1970s as they began to congregate and produce cultural works. The founding members of the fandom began organizing for the early conventions like the one in San Jose and helped solidify the aesthetic and artistic production and in media circulation.
There are plenty of events that caused this congregation, but I think one of the most important events in furry history was probably the cause. The release of Disney's Robin Hood. I mean, come on, it's impossible to watch this and not have an awakening of some sort. Robin Hood was, to the original founding members of the furry community, what Zootopia is nowadays. Slowly, we begin to see furry conventions, which started as subsections within sci-fi conventions, pop up to gather a group of people that hadn't really existed as an identifiable social circle until this point. We got our first full furry convention, Conference Zero, in 1989, and the fandom only grew from there. Furries start communicating online, one prominent early example of which being mucks, or online role-playing spaces that became prominently used by furries in the 90s and 2000s. I could go into the complex history of how exactly furry spaces evolved, but the long and short of it is that when there was a new art platform or a new social media, furries would find a way to create a community there. If I went in on the history of anthropomorphic media depiction, this video will be 5 hours long, so we're gonna have to mostly leave that alone for now. There are plenty of journalists who have written about this subject, so I recommend that if you are at all interested in what I discuss in this section, you look at some of this stuff. That same cultural gathering is true of our very own YouTube.com. I don't need to explain what YouTube is to you. You're already watching this video on YouTube. YouTube is one of the biggest social media platforms of all time, and therefore it makes sense that there is a large presence of furries on here. After all, as I mentioned previously, any sort of space to express creativity would quickly become a gathering place for furries. I'm one of them technically, but it's important right now to get some definitions straight. Furry YouTubers and YouTubers who are furries are two different things for our purposes. The Odd Ones Out, for example, is a furry, but he's not a furry YouTuber, as he doesn't make the bulk of his content about furry culture. It's the same with me. Despite the fact that I have now made 2-ish videos about the furry fandom or furry media in some capacity, most of my videos are just standard video essays. Before we begin discussing specific creators, there's another phenomenon we need to discuss, which is highly entangled in the furry fandom: therianthropy. Most popular furry creators nowadays are also Therians, and that term is highly misunderstood. There are so many different interpretations of what a Therian is that it's important to discuss it with actual Therians, which is what I did.
My name is Timber, or that's what I go by Timber. I've been in the alterhuman therianthropy community for about 4.5-ish years.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Atlas. I am a Therian. My Theriatypes are Arctic Fox, Bobcat, and White-tailed Deer. And I've been an Awakened Therian for about 2 to 3 years now.
I think back in 2021 or something, I first discovered dino masks and I fell in love with them.
Yeah, so my name's Alpine. I'm a Therian and furry YouTuber, and I like creating stuff. I like content creation and traditional and digital art. Oh, my camera. Sorry.
For each person who I interviewed who had a certain knowledge of therianthropy, I would get a slightly varying answer of what a Therian even is. The TikToker Timber Tumbles emphasized this variation like this.
For therianthropy, from at least what I've read and from what I've been told by other people and what I experience, is that it is a involuntary identity with a animal or a creature that has either lived on this earth and doesn't, or currently lives on this earth. And you cannot choose to identify as a Therian, and people choose to express it in different ways, whether that's physical, mental, spiritual, or emotionally.
From what I gathered, the main theme you see is that therianthropy is a series of involuntary animal behaviors that cause the person experiencing them to identify on some varying level as an animal. When I say that, it often causes a knee-jerk cringe reaction. However, it's important to get a few things straight. First of all, most of the creators I've met believe they're human at least on some level. They are aware that they are in the body of a human. You often hear the idea of people thinking Therians literally believe they are an animal. What is true is the identification of one's stereotype.
I do also feel it's important to point out that physical therianthropy is a real topic that needs real discussion. It is very, very nuanced, but basically what I glean from it is that most believers that they are physically an animal believe that since they have the mind or soul or whatever of an animal in their body, that is therefore the body of an animal. Of course, there are going to be varying perspectives on this, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's too much to go into. So, if you came to hear my perspective on physical therianthropy, that's not what you're really going to get from this video. It was just too much. It's already running too long.
I don't think that interpreting this as transgenderism but with animals, saying transgenderism made me feel more conservative than I ever have, is the direct one-to-one that plenty of right-wing media pundits interpret it as. This is especially true when you start talking about the idea of past lives and spirituality. Quite a few Therians believe that they connect with their stereotype due to some sort of spiritual tethering. Either that or they were that animal in their past life. Look, I'm an atheist, so I'm not going to try and attempt to talk about whether or not the idea of past lives and souls and all that is valid. That isn't my business. The point is that Therians interact in their daily lives in ways that are pretty much just human. If they aren't, most of that stuff is involuntary. You can't just choose to be a Therian, and personally, if given the choice, I wouldn't want to.
It's hard to explain, but I kind of just want to be an animal at most given times, and it's really annoying that I'm not. I know it sounds kind of strange, but it's kind of like a little thing in the back of my brain that's you should have paws right now, or you should have wings.
This also isn't a modern phenomenon. According to a fantastic paper by Vanessa Laura Delano Robertson titled The Beast Within, Anthropomorphic Identity and Alternative Spirituality and the Online Therianthropy Movement, there's a pattern of, quote, the mythical figure of the animal-human shapeshifter throughout mythology that could easily be traced to therianthropy. You see an especially large connection to the neo-paganism movement, due to its connection with nature and the power of the natural world. It's hard to even do a thorough history of therianthropy because, unlike furry culture, which started in the 70s, therianthropy in major storytelling started in the 2000s, specifically 2150 BCE.
The recurring motif of cross-species transformation is found in the oldest recorded story, the Epic of Gilgamesh, fragments of which date as far back as 2150 BCE. However, it is in the Greek myth of King Lycaon that the earliest werewolf myth is found.
This isn't even the beginning of the depiction of anthropomorphic characters either. The first one that is commonly cited is a carved statue of a lion man estimated to be crafted up to 40,000 years ago. The quote from Robertson I used referenced werewolves, and it's impossible to fully explain their significance. For example, we see the first online emergence of therianthropy on werewolf-related internet forums. And today, there are still Therians that identify with the image of lycanthropy, which is the category of animal transformation that describes werewolves. After all, that connection to involuntary animal behaviors is likely best represented by werewolves, which are the biggest tie between the statues and wall carvings of the past to modern-day forum posts. The influence of werewolf-related media and culture on Therian terminology runs very deep, included in the term shift. The best way I can describe a shift is the involuntary experience of physical connection with a stereotype, or even multiple at the same time. Sometimes people will experience it as a phantom limb sensation of something like a tail. Sometimes it is the desire to hunt something like a squirrel, which is also known as prey drive. Shifts come in many different variations, and each Therian will have a different experience with them.
I definitely do things that I would consider to be animalistic, just because I have that part of me that I feel is an animal.
It's hard to deal with sometimes because sometimes you get the urge to like bite certain things when you have certain shifts, and also when you get like phantom shifts like tails or ears, it's very irritating as well.
Each person will experience them with different frequency and duration, as well as different perception of these events. There is a lot of relation that can be seen between werewolves and Therians. Another misconception that often came up in my interviews was how often furries and Therians are misconstrued. The reason that the two are mixed up so much is because of two things in my mind. One, lack of research. Two, on some level, they both relate to the emotions and behaviors shown in the natural world. These masks, while they are typically associated with Therians, have also been used by people that are open about not being Therians, and rather furries.
Therians were like very trendy and stuff like back in like 2024. And I feel like I mislabeled myself because I was like always like sort of like uncomfortable, I guess.
Yeah.
With the idea of like identifying as an animal, but like I still identified as a Therian because it was trendy and stuff like that.
The connection with the space between animal and human is tangible in both furry and Therian culture. The communities are deeply entangled in art style and in online spaces. I personally think that's really cool. While they are separate things, the overlap online is enough to make a point out of. One of the most difficult parts of attempting to describe therianthropy is the tendency for people unfamiliar with the concept to label it as some sort of mental disorder. As a trans person, I know how your identity being labeled as a disorder of some sort can hurt communities, so I would like to reject the assumption of therianthropy as some sort of chemical imbalance in the brain, or disability, or mental defect, whatever else we can call it. I highly suggest you search for the words of an actual Therian on this subject, or maybe consider checking out the paper written by Vanessa Robertson, which has been a huge help in my research. While I disagree with some sections, she actually cites the words of Therians on subjects rather than talking out of her ass like some writers. So, I think it's worth a look. Either way, there isn't a ton of clinical or academic research on therianthropy, so I would like to recommend just listening to what actual Therians have to say. Whenever a rigid definition is posed, there will be somebody who disagrees. I do hope, though, that this long and winding section has at least clarified some of the most common myths about the concept. It is very difficult to talk about therianthropy right now, especially as conservatives like Brett Cooper have used it to fearmonger about the woke neo-Marxist leftists turning your kids into cats. As much as the knee-jerk reaction to Therians is often one of disgust, these communities exist and are important to talk about. Burying them like some sort of embarrassment wouldn't help anyone. With that, I think it's safe to talk about some specific creators. Boasting a whopping 436,000 subscribers the last time I checked, which is a ton on furry YouTube, Tab, whatever, is one of the leading faces in furry internet culture, both on YouTube and on TikTok.
Oh, also, I don't know if he's a furry as well as a Therian. He puts the hashtag furry tag in all of his videos, but that could just be for the algorithm. Tags can be deceiving. I mean, I put hashtag funny in mine. When you look up most popular furry or Therian YouTuber, there isn't really a straight answer. For furries, it usually brings up this guy, but going purely by sub count, I think that Tab might actually be near the top. For most popular Therian, it's nobody in particular.
Tab is, importantly for later in the video, young, skinny, white, and non-political for the most part, at least on YouTube. All of those things sound very unnecessary to point up, but let me cook for a few minutes, it'll make sense.
Tab's content is pretty standard for the furry and Therian communities on YouTube, mostly just dancing with gear on. Or at least that's what it used to be. Tab has made several videos in the past couple of weeks, months. Oh man, this video's taking me a long. That are actually really amazing.
Hey, do you guys remember this video from like a bajillion years ago? Well, I actually did something with those survey results. My presentation was going to be on therianthropy, but I had to switch it at the last minute because apparently my state's curriculum doesn't let me teach about that. They also told me I wasn't allowed to display my masks, so I hid them around the corner where someone could totally not see them. Overall, it was a great project and it helped me gain insight as to what researching therianthropy in the future might be like.
As I mentioned in my other section on the subject, therianthropy has barely been studied in any sort of legitimate setting, and promoting these communities within scientific areas is really cool. I cannot over-exaggerate how good it is that Tab has been doing this stuff. We need more research on these communities, and using your outreach to help with that is a really good use of influence. While there isn't much to talk about with the use of audios, it does make sense. Furries are all about having fun, and importantly, dancing. Furry raves are quite prominent at conventions, so it only makes sense that it would be common in online spaces. The only problem is that all of this is seen by the general public as cringe. Cringe culture has been incredibly prominent in discussions of furries, and it's definitely why they've garnered so much online disdain. Even I cringe at some of this stuff, like that one song about being a horse or something that genuinely makes my skin crawl. However, these knee-jerk cringe reactions often act as barriers between being just a little bit fun and silly and having a life. Being sincerely passionate and silly is often clowned on, and while some of it's justified, I think that a lot of that has contributed to a culture of insecurity. I'm not saying anything new, though. People have always been mean. As much as I don't interact with it often, the fun-loving nature of furry and Therian spaces would naturally work to create channels that specialize in this content. Tab also has some higher effort short-form stuff, things I can imagine would take a while to edit. Tab is a phenomenal creator. If this makes it to Tab, I will weep openly, and I am not joking about that. However, there is some controversy. Don't you guys love it when I reheat furry internet leftovers? Drama channel time. Okay, so as the story goes, Tab posted this with their ex-partner, Solar Pause, which is basically a table that poorly explained a new label they invented, Fauna Luna. This poor explanation via table fueled a massive controversy, mostly on TikTok, mainly surrounding therianthropy as a choice, which it isn't. It took me ages to find the post, which I couldn't because it was taken down, but it was posted on Reddit, captioned by this incredibly long comment, which basically sums up to, Therian is being used as an umbrella term, there are already terms for this, and it's redundant and unnecessary. If we were going based on this chart alone, I would agree. However, Tab later followed up with a post explaining further. The key terms that are seen as being basically the same as other-hearted, which means identifying with an animal rather than identifying as that animal, and other link, which is basically the voluntary choice to identify as an animal. But based on the follow-up post and the definition posted in that, I'm pretty sure this term is not similar to other link. It also isn't that much like other-hearted. The basic definition that Tab gave is an alter-human identity for someone who experiences involuntary animalistic urges/behaviors, but chooses to identify on a human/non-animal scale. That term, when it comes to the actual definition, is pretty inoffensive. And at the end of the day, choose to identify as whatever label you want, as long as it doesn't harm people. Labels are meant to give you the word to describe yourself easily, but if one doesn't help you, then it doesn't help you. That's it. Drama channel squiggles out. The term is dissolved now. I've been working on this video for so long that I wrote a section about a term It no longer exists. Because I thought it was important. I'm keeping it in, you can't stop me. All in all, Sodatab is one of the best representations of what the modern day Therian and furry community looks like on YouTube. Mostly dancing, audios, and silly but low effort content like that, mixed in with some really high effort content, some of which is actually able to become involved with shifting the mainstream's opinion on therianthropy. This sounds like a one-off, but we have creators like Ash Coyote, who has made an entire award-winning documentary about the furry fandom, which you should all watch after you finish this video. Link in description. I've seen this documentary actually cited in papers about the furry fandom during my research, and this is probably the best example of this type of high-effort content getting popularity. We'll discuss a few of its key issues briefly later, but it's at least entertaining. As pretentious as it sounds, content on YouTube has the potential to be
a medium, dare I say, an art form. Put the gun down.
Since online furry culture began with roleplay servers and fanfiction websites, and Therian culture began on forums, it's only natural that the art of writing would continue into YouTube. We've even got some furry video essays, such as Boring Keith talking about furry media, including his queer analysis of B-stars, which is another thing you should add to the queue after finishing this video. I think now we can begin seeing more patterns in content. I like to separate the furry and Therian content you find on YouTube into 5 categories, and I think defining those will actually be important before I move into further content creators. Just note that these are not the most strict categories of all time. Some people will fall into gray areas. Regardless, I still think it's useful to get some things separated and understood before we continue.
The first category, as I see it, is the more low-effort-ish short-form content. This is the majority of what you will find when you are scrolling the furry hashtag on here. It is mostly reliant on pre-established audios, trends, dances, the like. I do want to note that when I say low effort, I don't mean to be pretentious at all. It isn't meant to be the height of art. It's meant to be fun, which I respect. This content is not trash, slop, or the like just because it takes less effort than a TV show pilot. This also shouldn't be a surprise considering this is a large chunk of what a lot of short-form content on YouTube is in general. Furries aren't special for this at all. They just tend to be wearing gear while doing these dances. Why it's important to say low effort is because it means that this content can quickly become mass-produced. If you're a big creator who can get a significant amount of viewership off of this content, being able to pump out 3 videos a day can lead to some pretty serious cash. Again, no shade, this is what content creators in general do. However, it's still important to point out, even if a lot of these creators aren't using these videos purely to milk their audience. The second form of content is tutorials. These are way higher effort, and most major furry creators have at least one or so on their channel. That is, and I mean this sincerely, really cool. The furry community puts a lot of focus on sharing information on how to make masks, how to make fursuits, and all of the in-between. The community is self-sustaining, and a lot of online furry content relies on teaching the next generation. A lot of this stuff is quite admirable to me, and is also really hard. Have you ever tried to teach somebody a skill? Not just teach somebody about a topic, but a whole art form. It's hard. There's a reason I'm not a tutorial page. Tutorial content can also get a decent amount of views, and will be desperately devoured by young furries looking to make something so cool. I was gonna make a piece of furry art for myself, but I can't. A lot of these tutorials are really helpful. They encourage trying again, developing your style, and generally all of the things which lead to some amazing furry art. The third form of content is higher effort short form, for example, skits, short form tutorials, interviews, etc. There isn't much to say about it. It's mostly short form content from before, but a bit more original and takes a bit more effort. It's also harder to make buckets of money off of. After all, it would be ridiculous to expect a genuinely entertaining skit every day, especially not multiple times every day. The fourth form of content is art, animations, comic dubs, and music, etc., etc., etc. This is the really high effort stuff, and I would know. I've attempted animation, and it is really hard. Shout out to the animators in my audience. While some of this stuff can get popular, a lot of it will not. Especially if you are a beginner, your art will probably get more hate than it will love. It takes years and years of effort to make art that is accepted by a wide audience to be good. Even for doing comic dubs, you have to have a certain level of skill in voice acting, video and audio editing, and more to actually make something that looks and sounds good. Even if the comics aren't your original work, as long as you credit the artists, I think dubbing could be considered art as much as other forms of voice acting could. I'm also going to go ahead and put video essays in this category too. I'd say that it's artsy enough. I'm sure this fifth category won't matter at all though, so we'll just ignore it for now. I'm sure you can see the pattern of self-expression and the joy of creation. It's all very cool stuff, and the amount of amazing art, writing, music, and pretty much anything amazing that the furry fandom is able to produce is one of the main reasons why I love the fandom as much as I do. It's also really uplifting and accepting, which I'm sure I won't have to talk about later in the video because it's all peace and love and community. Yeah. Okay, enough foreshadowing and sarcasm. Let's talk about some more furry creators in depth. It's time to talk about my GOAT, Gecko. He also goes by Michael, but I'm nowhere near parasocial enough to refer to him by his real name. The recent long-form stuff consists of mostly unboxing masks and fan mail, which are both things that you would already have to be a part of the fan base to enjoy. Shorts are where all the action is, which is why I spent an ungodly amount of time watching them. After suffering a ridiculous amount of brain rot for staring at my laptop for an hour, I realized that the one main thing which really sets Gecko apart from his contemporaries is his political leanings. Gecko is explicitly a leftist, which I have a decent definition of on screen, pause if you need to, and is quite politically involved.
Hey Aspen, posting on TikTok isn't the same as being politically active. So, how did that make it to the final draft? Jesus.
That mainly comes into play with his posts and a lot of choice to back a lot of his videos with song by anti-fascist feminist punk band Cheap Perfume. He's also pretty overtly political generally, a good example of which being this TikTok from him. Yes, I know this video is about YouTube furries, but I have to be thorough. He's also willing to have nuanced discussion of his place within the furry and Therian community. His most controversial video recently has been one where he expresses the opinion that it is very possible to just stop being a Therian.
You can stop being a Therian. So I always see, I'm sure you see it too, people saying stuff along the lines of how you can't stop being a Therian because it means you were never one in the first place, or, you know, whatever. Any sort of argument saying you cannot stop identifying as one. And I'm here to say that that is completely untrue.
After all, if the behaviors related to therianthropy are involuntary, it could also just involuntarily stop. Again, I'm not a Therian, but I at least think this is an interesting and necessary thing to discuss.
Gecko serves an important space in the community, in my opinion, because he's actually willing to bring up these conversations.
Some animals give me boners!
He has stated that he literally believes he's an animal and is firmly against any discussion of therianthropy that tries to shove off his experience as freakish and abnormal. I would agree, but having conversations like that requires a lot of time and effort and defining things again and actually doing research and talking to the community, which a lot of people don't want to do. I think a lot of people in pretty left-leaning spaces who are aware of therianthropy are at least mildly okay with it in concept. That, or they just don't think threatening violence to 13-year-olds on the internet is okay, which, you know, fair point. However, even if they're supportive in concept, they haven't actually gone out of the way to talk to Therians about their experience in the community, and that causes their understanding of what therianthropy even is to be wrong. I'm honestly not trying to be condescending about it either. I had the exact same understanding as of like a year ago, which is how I know about it so well. You know, Therians are fine, but not those weird ones. They're making the completely normal Therians look bad. When I started making this video, I wasn't even going to talk about Therians that much, just out of my own non-understanding when it came to how important Therian internet culture is. However, now way more of the video is about Therians than it is about furries, because I realized that to people outside these spaces, they might think therianthropy is maybe okay and fine at best, and at worst, they believe that it's an annoying stain on their communities. Gecko pushes the conversations that are a bit more controversial into the mainstream, which is a really positive move toward more understanding of what therianthropy actually is, for people who would rather scroll for an hour than read one article about what they're talking about. People in that case being me. Anyway, even beyond furry or Therian discussions, Gecko is also pushing more topics of general interest.
Gecko is by far one of the most political mainstream furry creators on YouTube. It's not a lot of effort to do that though, as many of the creators in these spaces avoid politics on YouTube like the plague. I've been avoiding this discussion throughout the video, so let's do it. Let's do things the standard Squiggles way and get political about stuff. Hey, if you're the type of loser to comment under this video that I'm just too young to understand everything, let me give a little disclaimer. I don't know everything. I do not claim to. Do not take my word as gospel. Also, I am of the belief that it is smart for young people to educate themselves politically, especially when we live in such a politically turbulent time. So, why do online furries avoid politics so much? Let's just use the leading furry creators I can find as examples. So here we have Opal, 50 to Tab.
50 to Tab?
I'm sorry, did you just say 50 de tab? At least I can be glad I didn't pronounce Opal's name 5 Tinky Cat.
And a few others, and you barely see traces of politics all over their content. Mind you, the vast majority of furries are queer. For all of us, our existence is unfortunately a political thing. Despite the fact that it is unfortunate, it is sadly necessary for us to speak up about our community to make sure we are able to exist and get the care we need to do so. While I do not expect all of these creators to be as political as Gecko is, I think that in this time period, where you stand is really important. Woke take incoming, but I think some causes, especially those that hurt your audience directly, kind of need to be mentioned. I'm personally really passionate about mental health awareness and the oppression faced by the queer community, so I reference it in my content. I'm not expecting you to be chronically online, always looking for the next tragedy so you can stay woke. That would completely destroy your mental health, and everybody has got a life outside of the internet. However, even when you reach the smallest level of internet fame, it's kind of important for you to take notice of the level of outreach you can have. I really appreciate any creator who is able to use their audience for good, so especially when a lot of these creators are queer, why do they not speak much on anything political, even when it comes to their own rights and existence? The main reason I have thought of is the fact that it is really hard to become a popular furry, and there's a chance of losing part of your audience even for the most basic left-leaning takes. I'm not just talking about like radical leftist stuff either. You could lose a chunk of your audience just for saying something even like slightly left of moderate. According to the website Furscience, which logs the dynamics of the furry community, there is a chunk of furries that would define themselves as socially very conservative. This doesn't make any sense to me. How are you going to be in one of the queerest spaces around and think homosexuals are destroying the traditional family unit with cultural Marxism? But okay, man. It is really hard to get popular as a furry or Therian. Some of you might have noticed that when I reference popular furry creators or Therian creators, they only have around 400 to 500,000 subscribers. That's a lot, but it's nowhere near as popular as you can get on YouTube without being a furry and or Therian. I have not found a single YouTuber within those categories to have more than 1 million subscribers. I haven't even really found one with more than 700,000. When it's that hard to get to where you are, especially when you depend on YouTube for income, why would you jeopardize that over politics? Again, I don't think that this is very evil, or every YouTuber who isn't constantly talking about the various awful things happening in the world right now is a bad person. I do just think it's interesting, and the fact that so many of these creators, even if they're trans or queer in some way, are just completely apolitical in their online persona and the vast majority of their content. I don't know, it's interesting. They're all white, skinny, and young. Now, them being white, skinny, and young isn't a problem. I'm 2 of those things, so it would be hypocritical for me to say so. I do find it interesting, though, that the only people who are furries or Therians that get popular on YouTube are as ideal as they can be outside of their queerness. These are the only people that are allowed to gain any popularity, and that it's really important to recognize. There are very few exceptions to this rule. I don't blame this entirely on the furry creators for not uplifting voices outside of what mostly conservative audiences think is the ideal. I do think that the fault is mostly just the fact that bigotry exists, man. Despite the fact that there are less ethnic minorities than white people who visit conventions, it would just be plainly untrue to say that this fact explains why we don't see nearly as many popular non-white creators in these spaces. I also think it's important to talk about this data. The main source I could find for furries being made up by near 90% white people is from that organization mentioned earlier, Furscience. I think there's one issue with these studies being used as representative of the nature of the furry community at large. These results were gathered primarily at North American conventions.
There's someone in my house.
Let's just think about this. There seems to be an issue with this being that not every person in the fandom can even afford to go to conventions. Also, these results were gathered in North America only. They mention in this study that results gathered from other countries saw a rise in East Asian furries. They bring up a few possible issues with using this for an analysis of the fandom at large, and not just convention spaces themselves at one point.
One caveat should be noted, however. The majority of these studies were conducted at North American conventions or, when online, were conducted in English, which may account, at least in part, for these results.
Despite all of that, I do think that the furry fandom is predominantly white, just based on what I've seen. This could be due to social stigma, culture, any other variable, but we really don't know for certain. I especially cannot be certain of this, seeing as the fact that I'm white. I'm going to leave it to people of color within the furry community to express their own thoughts on why this could be, or if it's not even true and I'm completely off the mark. There have been influential people of color involved in the furry fandom since its founding. For example, the legendary Ken Sample, who literally invented the concept of a fursona. Furries of color have always existed, have always been driving forces in moving the fandom forward, and yet they barely get acknowledged. Despite the fact that I quite enjoyed the documentary The Fandom and think it tells the story of the fandom well, a reviewer named Rocky Tiger, also known as Weasel, had qualms with its underrepresentation of furries of color.
The furry fandom is a subculture rich with diversity, but it's not often talked about. Talk of bringing furries of color into any aspect of the fandom is mostly ignored, maybe getting some light applause from white people.
Upon rewatching, it really only highlights the white voices in the community, ignoring how diverse the fandom is.
Ken Sample quite often would draw this little cougar guy that looked an awful lot like Ken. We started calling that character Ken Cougar. We thought, hey, we should have our own character too that's actually us. This was a big shift in the fandom. We went from fans of animal people to being animal people.
Would you be surprised if I told you that the section I just showed you is the one part about Ken Sample? That's it. Yeah, he invented one of the most major modern day furry concepts. Yeah, we'll give him 30 seconds.
I also struggled a bit writing this part because, I mean, despite the fact that I've attempted to bring diverse perspectives into this essay with interviews and quotes, I'm still just a white person, putting myself at the forefront while saying we need more diversity. The fandom really needs to uplift every perspective we can, and if we don't, we risk losing the real diverse history of the furry fandom. After you're done with this video, please read this full review of the fandom. It is beautifully written and makes a lot of good points. The author of this also writes about a lot of furry media, so if you're into that, you should check out the link in the description. They also edited a collection of short stories of furries of color titled Diversity, good one, which I'm looking forward to reading. The point is that the furry and Therian community, even if it's true that it is predominantly white, massively underrepresents the voices of color and generally voices outside of the norm. We don't see many popular plus-sized furries that have so much to say, and the same goes for visibly disabled furries and Therians.
When it comes to the plus-size representation problem in the Therian community, the frustrating thing is that there really isn't a defining source for it. There isn't really an article which accounts for the massive underrepresentation of a group of people that I know exists. Luckily in the furry fandom there's more acceptance, but it requires you to scroll past a lot of fetish art. The thing that frustrates me is that for Therians who are overweight, they will likely feel less seen. For certain Therians who might be disabled, they will feel put down by an algorithm, which seems to be feeding them, and all the other different categories I've mentioned throughout the segment, one specific message. If you want to be accepted, maybe you can do it in your weird little niche within an already pretty small subgroup. Mainstream attention, though, is out of your reach. For some fundamental reason, your skin color, your weight, the way your body looks, you are not good enough to ever be deserving of a spotlight. It physically pains me to know that somebody out there might be fed that impression.
I personally believe that if you have the power in these communities, you should be trying to uplift those voices. However, I do not think anybody is evil for not doing this. If I see a single comment that says, "Oh, do you think we should cancel everybody who doesn't always talk about people of color?" Like, my answer is no. And also, you're stupid. Get off the internet, touch grass. It also isn't entirely the fault of popular white furries and Therians we see so much. It's predominantly the fact that the internet is racist. This will inevitably lead to the erasure of the voices that existing hegemony does not want to hear. This conversation is complicated, and there is no way I could properly sum up every single voice within this subject of representation. If I got something wrong, though, and you know so, please comment. There are very few exceptions to all major furry creators being skinny and white, except, who is this person? We'll get to it later. Alright, we made it! Let's get back to specific creators. Mushroom Swirl is quite interesting because, despite their large subscriber count, their videos have been greatly lowering in viewership recently. If you check their comment sections, you will probably find somebody saying, "Oh, I remember you," to which Mushroom will surely respond with, "Yeah, I've been getting less views because of a hiatus I took, and accounts getting removed, and the fact that I can't keep a posting schedule, and all that." I very much relate to the posting schedule thing. Some of you might know Mushroom because they used to be the pinned comment on my eBay Carson video, which was released at my prime, back when I was good. So, I don't want to be mean when I say this, just in case like Mushroom is watching this after the last video, I want to be very, very, very clear. This is not meant to be mean. But first, let's start with some nice stuff. Mushroom seems to care about their fans, which is very cool. They have a very good relationship with their audience from what I have seen. They seem to enjoy making content, but I guess I couldn't technically know. I mean, people say I look like I enjoy making my content, but, you know, I actually hate it so much. I only do this so I can exploit my audience, and YouTube will give me my scraps. Either way, they seem to like doing what they do. However, the content was just incredibly frequent and incredibly similar. Every video was the same mask for months, the same background, and was mostly just lip-syncing to a popular audio. Offbeat.
I'm at the point where I generally don't know if this is just some joke I don't get. Like, just move your clip a little bit to the right. You can move it. You have CapCut, presumably, right? You have video editors. Just move it slightly. Just move it.
The video seemed more concerned with riding the wave of whatever was popular than making something original, fun, and enjoyable. I personally didn't enjoy it. However, this is representative of that first archetype I mentioned earlier. The content isn't creative, but there is a lot of it. Damn, sorry, that's what I mean. Look, I'm just naturally blunt. It's not my fault. This content isn't bad, just like low effort. Remember what I said from the beginning of the video about how low effort doesn't mean slop? I don't know who would make slop that requires no creativity. Of course, they do have some higher effort stuff, like edits of characters from the mobile game Cookie Run Kingdom, which I have avoided because I have heard it is like crack. They're also very adamant that they do not care about what people say in regards to their new content. Wait, people actually care?
I couldn't care less if someone misses my old content. I sure as hell don't miss it. It was low quality.
I would have to agree with that. Even though I'm still not a personal fan of their content, I can agree that they have clearly learned their skills over time, which have contributed to a rise in the production value. I don't know if you can necessarily have production value in a 10-second short filmed in your bedroom, but the difference is obvious at least. I really appreciate any creator who you can tell is actually putting in the work to make what they do better. Mushroom Swirl, while they say something about that first archetype of content and the furry community, they're not bad. They're just a fun-loving guy, and I appreciate that. Not everything in the fandom can be a 4-hour-long media analysis. That is good. We need fun, we need dancing, we need love, we need that rambunctious, silly energy that is the rhythm of the whole fandom. What we need is expression. Creative expression comes in many forms, and almost all of them can be seen in the fandom. That is beautiful, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The only issue is when people take advantage of that for their own gain. You think you know better? You think you're so high and mighty just because you make nerdy videos in your room? I don't think I'm sure. I'm sure you just call the content low effort because it just rolls off the tongue. I just finished a section on why it's not a bad thing. What matters is creative expression. And then you did more foreshadowing, right? When are you gonna spit it out? I'm just setting everything up and you're just scared. Say it. Say who this video is about. They mean a lot to a lot of people, and I don't wanna be the drama channel. That wasn't the goal. So your moral code just goes out the window when you don't wanna rock the boat? Pathetic. Okay. I've been dodging it, admittedly, this whole time. But I think it's time to talk about the creator who actually inspired me to make this. Let's talk about Fennec Fox. Before I begin, let me give a brief disclaimer. Throughout the video thus far, I have not been nearly as negative as I am about to be. Despite that, I don't want Fennec off the internet. It's good that people have access to a wide range of furry and Therian content. That is necessary. We need a diverse community, and I think that quite a bit of the content that Fennec makes is nice, and good, and cool, and awesome. Nice writing, man. However, that does not outweigh the fact that I have a lot of issues with him. Also, as far as I'm aware, the other furry and Therian creators I have featured throughout interviews don't have the same issues with this as me. I did not tell anybody that this is what the video would turn into, because when I first started writing it, it wasn't gonna be this. Alpine, for example, does not have the same issues I have as far as I'm aware. Do not bring any of your issues with me into their comments. Even if you think I'm a total asshole who doesn't know what I'm talking about, that doesn't justify any hatred on the account of other people who I did not inform about the twist of this video. They might not even like it, and that's fine. I have not tried to use any of their words in this section as to not endanger any relationship they might have with Fennec. Don't harass anybody interviewed, don't harass me,
don't harass Fennec. I am making this as a form of hopefully constructive criticism. That gives you no right to threaten him or generally be a dick. If you provide criticism, that's different from unjustified hate, though. Also, if you're Fennec, I know you've been going through a really tough time recently, both mentally and physically. This section can get pretty angry, so if you think that's going to be too much of a mental strain to hear, I would advise you to go to this timestamp for when I calm down and give a summary of how I think we can move forward. Okay, let's talk about this now. If you look at Fennec's short-form content, it looks like standard Therian short-form stuff. Nothing really to report on. He's even got some tutorials for how to make these legs, which I debated making for this video, but I'm not Philosophy Tube. Y'all are getting costumes out of me. If you just look at the short-form, you're probably wondering what the problem is. I would agree. If you're only considering the short-form content, I would actually say Fennec is an above-average creator. It is also important to note that I'm unsure whether or not Fennec is a furry and a Therian, or just a Therian. Either way, he promotes ideas related to, through the cultural crossovers I mentioned earlier in the video, furry culture, heavily, especially through his long-form videos. Speaking of which, let's talk about these long-form videos. When you look at this page, what do you see? That's the mystery 5th type of furry and Therian content, as well as the last part of the title of this video that you were probably wondering when I was going to discuss. Theft. Compilation content. Almost everything that Fennec has made that is long form is a compilation. If you look at the most recent one, posted 3, 5, 7, 8 months ago, you see that it says the number 93. However, when I counted, I got 2 more than that. This could be wrong, but almost 100 compilations is still a lot, regardless of the 2 video difference. Let's just take a look at a few of these videos. Notice anything about these descriptions? Okay, bunch of tags, blah, blah, blah. Credit to the creators. Okay, I'm sure he meant to leave a link, so we can access the content of the creators who actually made these videos, just in case people want to do that. Nope, no link. He does have a link to email him to remove your content, which is good, I suppose. However, how are these people going to know that their video is in the compilation if you don't tag them or tell them? Let's just say this is a bad example. No need to be crashing out already. Credit goes to all creators shown in the video. 2 bad examples, I guess. Despite the fact that he can't seem to find the time to link the actual creators, he sure can spend the time to link all of his socials. Get that bag, I guess. Let's just look at a 3rd video. A 4th. A 5th. Jesus, Fennec. Let's just go back to the beginning of these compilations. Maybe he started off by linking, but then got lazy. Nope, credit to all the creators. Alright, Aspen, calm down. It's not that bad. I'm sure that he isn't making a ton of money from this. Oh wait, he is. For this bit, talking about the money, I was going to use one of those YouTube money calculators, but all of those wildly overestimate the amount of money the average creator will make.
A few of these videos have been copyright claimed by the original creators, which, good. However, there is a chance that this was actually just a copyright for the music used in the videos, which means a record label's getting even more money than they already get by exploiting artists, which, not good. So we can pray it's the little man being able to get some of their sweet content back from Fennec's hands, but you never know.
Add that to the fact that, I forgot to mention, he has over 586,000 subscribers. This makes him more popular based on subscriber count than SodaTab, than eBay Carson, or than any other figure on the platform that I could find who makes furry or Therian content. How? Well, at this point, I think we know. It's from stolen content. When I say stolen content, the response is surely going to be something around the lines of, but you can see their username on the screen. I'm going to be honest here. Do you think that's out of laziness or out of kindness? This content is so low effort that the thumbnails are just copy-pasted templates. Do you think he's going to go through all of the trouble to censor the usernames? Just to show how easy this content is to create without any need for creativity, let's just do a little speed run. How fast can I make an 8-minute long compilation of furry or Therian TikToks? Just to set a baseline for how long my normal content takes to make, I spent 5 months on this video, and I'm nowhere close to done. Future Aspen, tell me how long it took to make the compilation.
My audio cut out for some reason when I recorded this, but I can tell you now that it was 37 minutes, 53 seconds, and 82 milliseconds, so.
I will acknowledge that, yes, you can see the usernames. However, there's no way to directly access the creators through something like a link. Let's also just talk about the idea of it being okay if the name is on screen. If somebody took one of my videos, put my ad in the corner, posted it in a compilation, and made a ridiculous amount of money from it, I would be pissed. It doesn't matter if the name is there. Fennec is still raking in dough from content that isn't his and that he didn't make an effort to transform in any way. That transformation point is something I really want to hammer home. I don't think that using other people's work in your video is a bad thing. If I did, I wouldn't have quoted all the sources I have. The little check I do when I want to say a piece of content is stealing is asking myself how much of the video would have to be removed if the creator was forced to remove any content they do not transform. Transform in this case meaning significantly alter the usage of the original work. That way isn't just like the exact same thing. For these compilations, you'd have a runtime of nothing! Fennec's videos do not exist without directly copy-pasting other people's videos into his timeline and calling it a day. That's not a good thing, obviously. Of course, the reason for these compilations is obvious to me. A lot of young Therians will come to this content because they don't know where to go for stuff from those communities on YouTube, and compilations come up when you look up Therian. Timber Tumbles, who I interviewed earlier, said that they actually found out about the furry fandom and alter humanity through a compilation. This is really common. The kids who find these are also likely too young to access TikTok, so these compilations serve that purpose as well. Since you don't give them a place to go from these videos to watch those creators individually, some of which do have YouTube channels, they're just stuck thinking, well, this is how you access furry and Therian creativity on the platform. Well, you don't exactly leave them with nowhere to go. If they want some short-form creators who talk about and represent Therianthropy, all they have to do is switch to the Shorts tab. You present yourself as the only known, easily accessible option to finally meet a community on the platform. You have positioned yourself as the guy for curation of content, creation of original content, and overall being the hub of everything, the nexus of Therian content. That's another bad thing. No matter which way you twist it, this content is slop and requires literally no creative passion. I'm fine with lower effort short form content because at least that's kind of original. It's fun, it represents the joyful nature of the fandom. What shouldn't be representative of either furries or Therians is the blatant thievery that Fennec has brought to the table. Compilation YouTube is slop. It is theft. And I know how this sounds, but I genuinely think it makes these communities look bad. I personally don't want to associate with creators that are just stealing shit right in the open with no credit. I love the furry and Therian community on YouTube. I love how both of these communities will share tutorials and information with each other to improve their art, gear, and literal way of life in some cases. What I don't love is this. Fennec isn't the only one doing it, though. There are loads and loads of channels such as make their entire channel off of theft, and are probably making some decent money and clout from this. One of the funniest things I've seen while going down this rabbit hole was when I checked out one of these compilation people's description, and it said something around the lines of, "Oh, credit to the creators, I don't usually link them in the description, but I'm trying my best." And they clearly weren't trying their best because I clicked a ton of their long-form videos and there were no credits. Oh yeah, I've been making money off the content these people made without their permission and not even linking them in my description, but I'm just trying my best. Ooh, please watch my slop so I can make a ton of money. It would be like if I took an art piece that an artist was gonna get like $50 from, and then I take it, sell it for $200, and say it's fine because their signature was still on it, and when I sold it, I said, hey, credit to the person I stole this from. I also think that this description says something about how these people work. Some of them, at least, know it's bad. Some of them probably understand that you should be linking the content in the description. They just don't want to. That creator also had an email where you could request to have your content taken down from their channel, which seems to be a common strategy among these types of content creators. I also just don't think this works because, again, how is the person whose content you stole even gonna know? These videos do get pretty good viewership on average, but if you're like me and just don't watch compilations and have not expressed any interest in doing so, how are you even gonna be recommended the video to know that your work was taken? It just feels like a formality to make this content seem a little bit less like theft and appease the possible icky feelings the consumption of compilations might stir in your viewers. The other argument for this type of theft is that it gives the original owner exposure, which is just such bullshit. Why would a viewer go out of their way to try and find the person's original video and scour the internet for it after watching yours if by seeing yours they've already watched it? Oh, I'm sorry. Were they the one making all that money and getting over 500,000 subscribers off of the compilations on your channel? No!
And these channels offer no outlet for that to happen because they don't link the original videos. There is no way that I see it that the countless furries and Therians who have had their content reposted shamelessly have earned even a fraction of the money that is rightfully theirs. This is the same reason I have a problem with those 5 hours of ex-content creators' videos to fall asleep to videos, because that's still just theft. Even if you're not making money from it, that would be like if we went back to that art scenario, but instead of selling it for $200, I just gave it away for nothing. And guess what? The original creator still doesn't get anything! However, I do have an inkling that this content can make some money. When I started writing this section, I assumed that somebody had already made an overly long video essay discussion about how unethical compilations are, especially when they are going after small creators, which Fennec is doing.
All of this is just what I found in like 5 minutes of searching for one video. That is sad. So I advise that you dig through a couple of his other videos and try and find some more and make sure these guys get credited. This sucks.
Okay, my plan was just that I was gonna leave the small creator stuff in the voiceover section, but I saw one in compilation number 90, which made me so mad I had to put it in the main section. A clip in this video, around 3 minutes and 5 seconds, was taken from at David Orth 7, I think, which is a TikTok account with only 41 followers made by a 51-year-old man. Hey, I guess he can rest easy knowing that at least Fennec thinks his video is sweet. This is one of the first accounts by an older Therian I found in the making of this video, and for Fennec to take his content and put it up on his channel with no link to find more is just absolutely absurd to me. There's no way to look at this where Fennec comes out looking like a good guy. Oh, also, this gives me a good chance to say the exposure thing is wrong, because all of his first 3 videos got roughly the same view count, despite Fennec only showing 1. His most recent 2 have gotten much less viewership though, so you can't even argue that this increased popularity for the first 3 was because Fennec encouraged people to follow him. When I first looked up if compilations are okay and good for this video, the first thing I see is always entrepreneurs showing how you can make thousands of dollars and live your dream lifestyle by just reusing content. Hey man, the word you're looking for is stealing. Thieving even. Taking what's not yours. Anyway, I also find it difficult to trust these guys. After all, they're pretty much all trying to sell you a course. If I could hazard a guess, they actually make way more money scamming you by telling you that your dream lifestyle just requires a little theft than they do by doing the actual thievery. However, there is a chance that these guys are right. Even if it's hard to start an audience by doing this stuff, somebody like Fennec definitely has a massive audience and a massive opportunity for earning. Even if you aren't monetized, this still isn't good. It is stealing. Stealing sucks. End of story. It doesn't matter if it's a TikTok or a hypothetical painting. The one channel that I've seen that makes this type of content but actually does all of the things I think would be required is reposted furry TikToks, because they get permission from every single creator featured and link them in the description. That's the only way this kind of compilation content can ever work, in my opinion. In my discussion with Doodlebuggy, they actually brought up a very good point.
I think it's like definitely good for people who don't have TikTok. But if there's no credits like written down or whatever, or like the creator specifically said to not put them in a compilation, then that's where it gets like messy.
Being able to see content from other platforms is pretty cool. There needs to be credit though. If there isn't, it's just mildly entertaining stealing. If you look at most of the content made by these compilation creators, it just sucks. That's definitely true in the case of Fennec. No links, no permission, just theft that's passed over by the community. Some people might say, well, I'm a hypocrite because I use other people's videos and writing throughout this video. The thing about my content which makes me believe it's okay to do that is that, number one, I have added every creator I discuss in depth so that they both know I made the video if they care at all, and also I've allowed my audience easy access to their content directly from my video. 2, the numbers I show whenever I pull up a source correspond to the exact videos and articles I pulled from in my description. And 3, my entire channel isn't built on the backs of these people. If you took away my videos and outside sources and the quotes and only kept my speaking and voiceover and video, you would still have an actual video underneath it. In fact, I would argue that most of this video is me yapping rather than it is me showing you clips and saying, wow, that's crazy. The difference between what myself and other creators do with their sources is that we actually link where we got our stuff and transform it in a significant way.
What Fennec is doing is basically like, instead of when I talked about how the beast within affected my writing process and I used information from it, I just sat down and read you the whole paper word for word along with 15 other papers. The worst part is that I can tell Fennec is creative. I can tell Fennec is talented. I can tell Fennec is a good content creator. However, these compilations disgust me. In a group which puts so much value into art, this theft really stings. For any furry or Therian content creators, how would you feel if a video you worked on for a while was just taken like this, without permission or credit? No attention goes on your art, it all just goes to some douchebag who had to do nothing but open CapCut for a couple minutes. I am not at all oblivious of the fact that as I am writing and rewriting this script, there have been countless incidents of furries and Therians not just being harassed online, but physically assaulted. There's been a wave of cruel people showing up to furry or Therian events and meetups to jump them. Some even scheduling their own fake meetups to lure furries and Therians to get attacked. I cannot overstate how awful it is to do things like this or to excuse it. I get choked up every time I see this news because a lot of these people are young, some around my age, and some remind me of my best friends. I can't even imagine being brutalized like this for the most trivial reasons. Also, online harassment isn't just something to brush over. When you look up most popular Therian, which I did during my research process while looking for the most popular Therian YouTuber, one of the most popular suggested questions is most popular Therian threats. When you click it, you see many Therians discussing how much hate they get and asking how to cope with it all. Sadly, when you're drawn to online spaces where you can be free from uneducated people's assumptions, you can be introduced to the wonderful world of furry and Therian content by blatant, out in the open theft. All of this is just plain old bad. Every time I revisit this script, I'll think I went too hard on these creators, but then I look at the content and realize why I'm so mad in the first place. I can also tell that some of you are looking at your screen and typing a comment saying, it isn't that deep. So let me tell you why it is. It's that deep because these creators probably spent hours on their masks, drawings, animations, and edits. It's that deep because a lot of these creators are pretty small relative to Fennec and have never gotten the recognition that they deserve. It's that deep because these communities were built on hundreds of silly, artful, crafty, and talented beings. It's that deep because when you have creators like Fennec, like furry TikToks, like all of these other compilation creators looking at this beautiful, diverse, engaging, kind, and gifted community, you know they don't see it as an opportunity for art. They see it as an opportunity for profit.
Isn't it numbing? Persecuted publicly, penalized for trying to be something. It makes you feel ugly, but I know a way you can make a little money. It doesn't matter if the whole community lives and breathes creativity. It doesn't matter if they've worked on all of their stuff for weeks. All of that stuff is free if you see how I see. I know it feels a little crazy, but do you wanna get famous? Maybe. Ignore all those who say it's lazy. All you gotta do is just steal shit, baby. Do you ever find it hard to have ideas? Have no fear. All you need is CapCut. Take that content, put it right here. Then you post and you rake in the cash. No need to ever feel bad. You got what you wanted, no more loss. Don't worry about the guys who are paying the cost. I know it feels kinda crazy, but don't you wanna get famous maybe? Seems like you've been feeling bad lately. Who the fuck cares? Just steal shit, baby! Nobody cares, nobody cares, nobody cares that you steal shit. Nobody cares, nobody cares. How do you ever get away with it? Nobody cares, nobody cares,
Nobody cares that you steal shit. You don't care, you don't care. You just leave us to deal with it. Nobody cares, nobody cares. Nobody cares that you steal shit. Nobody cares, nobody cares. How do you ever get away with it? Nobody cares, nobody cares. Nobody cares that you steal shit. You don't care, you don't care. You just leave us to deal with it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Steal shit, baby. Whoa. That's it. Alright, that's how I'll end it.
Alright. Negativity session mostly over. We made it through another one. If you're a Fennec or a compilation creator that is watching this and you're wondering what you should do now that I've shat on what you do for a bit, I actually do have some vague solutions. I'm going to be talking about Fennec's content specifically because he's who this video is about, but this applies to anyone within these communities. First, delete the compilations. I don't need you to delete your channel unless your furry TikToks. Might be best to just start anew, but there's no way that you can ethically produce compilation content without actually going back and crediting every single source you used. You either have to get direct permission from every creator, link them, or delete the videos. I would actually say that it might be hard to get away with just links in the description, since it's not really transformative content like reaction content or something. For direct usage of 100% of other people's videos with no additional commentary, I would say that asking permission is actually probably the best route. I do genuinely think that compilations can be a good resource. However, there is debate to be had over that. If you want to go through every single one of these videos and link every video in the description and get permission from their creators, go ahead. If you can't do those things, the videos need to go. The reason I don't want Fennec to delete his channel is because there's some good content on here. I know Fennec is creative, so if you're Fennec, use that creativity and make some good stuff. If you deleted all of this, and I'm being completely genuine here, I think your channel would actually be one of the best ones on the furry Therian space on YouTube. The short form content you make is good. You're able to help the community, so keep doing that. Especially in a community that's so harassed due to cringe culture, it's up to content creators and other members of these communities to stand up for each other, but also to call each other out if something hurts other members of the community. However much it pains me to say it, I think Fennec's actions directly contribute to harm done inside the Therian community and furry fandom. If you really love this compilation type of thing so much, make reaction content. When I say reaction content, I don't mean the reaction slop channel type of thing where you give a 3-second reaction to a 30-second long clip. Wow, that's crazy. My advice is to make sure you are reacting and talking more than the actual videos are playing. If you want to learn more about what reacting should and shouldn't look like, I actually highly recommend the channel Jax Films. It's a channel made by Jax Films that centers around bad reaction content and content theft in general. That channel was a huge inspiration for me making this video and has influenced a lot of how I see and how I respond to content theft. I think that if you make reaction content, that could be really good, get decent viewership, and transform the content. Just make sure you link the original creators in the description. The key here is to make transformative and original stuff. At the end of the day, that's all I'm asking. I'm not in control of your channel and what you do, but what I can say is that I think this being most of your long-form content is bad. How you move on from now is up to you. Oh, and brief note for the viewer. You can make an impact, even on the most minor level. Stop watching this shit. I know it's mostly not up to you, but if you maintain a level of awareness about this stuff in your casual content viewership while looking for anything to end the deafening silence of your day-to-day life, that's helping a lot. I think a fair course of action is to comment, hey, this is stealing, and dislike before, depending on the response of the creator, maybe reporting them. Still, be cautious. I don't want these people to end up getting copyright strikes that take their channel down, and I feel like people will miss the fact that the creators just obviously cited a source and end up accidentally reporting someone who didn't deserve it. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that I think content on this platform can be art. I think that when you're making your long-form stuff, think about whether you are making art or if you are making content. Are you making something creative or are you making slop? Are you making something original or are you stealing? These are important questions to ask yourself going forward. So, Fennec,
I love most of what you post. I love your online persona. I love how you represent people from cultures other than I love eating raw mayonnaise for the whole community. I seriously think that you can become one of the greatest furry and Therian creators on the platform. However, I'm not some sort of like savior who can make the space perfect, especially since I'm kind of an outsider. I'm not a hero who can help you become your best self. The only person that can make you your best self is you. It's your choices, your thoughts, your actions. The real thing that's going to be able to make this community a better place is some reflection. When you ask yourself at the end of the day what you have brought to the fandom, your peers, and the communities you want to support, your answer is what will define what furry and Therian YouTube looks like. It's up to you now, all of you, to help the fandom grow, flourish, and be the best it can possibly be. The choice is yours. Go out and make it. Thank you.
So, what do you think is your advice to furries out there who, whether they want to get into content creation or not, or if they just want to like find community? What is your advice?
Put yourself out there. You're not going to be able to make friends if you don't put yourself out there. And don't be scared of like any furries. They're all nice. I promise you. Almost all of them are so nice.
Okay, so mostly it's been really good. A lot of the people that I talk to, they're super kind and they're super nice. And I know that's definitely a big thing in like the furry and the Therian community, is that a lot of people are super nice.
I'd say, like, you shouldn't have to really hide who you are in these communities, because I know they're very, like, opening to others. You can be as creative as you want, because, like, there's really no limit when it comes to, like, making OCs and, like, art within the furry community.
Friends, definitely go to friends. Like, they're, especially close friends, they're there for you, like.
But I just say, if you feel, like, left out or excluded from the community in any way, most of the community is really nice. Try to make friends. If you're making online friends, be careful. But it's just mainly focus on yourself. Therianthropy is all about your own identity and how you see yourself on the inside.
Hi, it's me, Aspen, from the video you just watched. I do want to give a couple thank yous and say a couple things before I close this behemoth of a video out. Number one, thank you to all of these people who I interviewed for this project. They were massive helps in furthering my understanding of a community which I only had a very small amount of knowledge about beforehand. Even if all of them decide that they hate me after seeing the end of this video, fair, I do want to thank them for all the contributions they made. I also want to give a huge thank you to all of my friends who listened to me rant about the respective topics in this video excessively for the last couple of months. Finally, a huge thank you to you for watching this. It's been such a work in progress for a while, and, you know, if you're a previous subscriber, or even if this is the first introduction to my channel that you're getting, thank you. It means a lot that you stuck it out through the whole very messy thing. I do want to say that liking the video really helps get it out to more people, and subscribing helps get my channel out more, and also helps you keep up with my content. If you're interested in what you see here, I've got a lot more ideas in the making after I take a really quick 6-month break after this long-ass project. I do also have a Patreon, which I know if you watch video essays, you're probably tired of hearing that sentence. But yeah, it helps support the things I do. I want to make all my videos the best production quality they can get to. That way I can get the message out to more people, whatever the message is, however it changes in the next however much longer I do this for. Also, if you like the little song I made, it should be on every streaming service except for Spotify soon after the making of this video. It should also be on my Bandcamp if you want to directly support, and that version should come with the instrumental of the project. If you want to use that for something, use it for background music in your videos, I'm totally okay with all of that. So, I think those are most of the things I need to say. But overall, yeah, thank you, all of you, for watching this. Please don't talk to me. Please. I don't need that.